All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Dr. Robinson is unable to be with us this morning, so I'll be conducting in his place. Looks like we do have a quorum. So, first order of business is to review the minutes from the June meeting. And has everyone had a chance to review those? And
I would motion to approve the minutes, Brian.
thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Valentine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Are there any opposed? And are there any abstain? Okay, looks like the motion passes unanimously. And next we'll move on to the DOR board update and with Dr. Strohacker, and I think she's going to give us some updates as well.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. To go through the DUR updates with what we've covered, I believe in June we've discussed what was discussed in June, but that was the CGRP inhibitor that we were able to look at its place in therapy, one of the oral agents, and I know we visited those in P&T afterwards. In July, we did something new, which was look at utilization patterns for our Medicaid fee-for-service population. So we looked at our top 20 drugs by utilization and our top 20 drugs by cost. And with this, we actually created a really nice table to look to demonstrate for the board what are the top drugs, what are the utilization patterns, and then how are we managing those various products. So we looked at ProDer edits. So we were looking at whether there was a prior auth on them. We discussed prior auth criteria if there was a prior auth. We looked at any edits that were built in the pharmacy system as that claim went into the system and adjudicated. So if there were quantity limits or age edits. And then we also looked at retro DUR work that had been done. So after a claim processes and fills, we have lots of work that's being done on the DUR side that looks at and addresses utilization after the claims have been filled and received by the patients. And a lot of this work is aimed directly at the providers. Some of you may have received letters or calls from us for some of that retro DUR work, but it's aimed at safety, evidence-based use, and sometimes we're able to identify patterns, like if we're going to develop policy, we may develop outreach that helps educate our providers on what the policy changes are that are coming and help them understand how this will impact their specific patients. So in July, this is what we focused on. Also, we've been bringing prior authorizations back to the board for updates and review. We had taken a lot of single prior authorizations for rare diseases. We had probably at least 10 different forms for many of them were single-use drugs that are for rare diseases, and we developed a single prior auth form for those with differentiators when it was needed. So there's a lot of common things we ask for these rare disease medications. And then where we had differences, we put those at the end of the form to be more drug specific. In August, we actually covered the anti-asthmatic biologics. And then last month in September, or this month in September, we covered the new peanut allergy drug, Palforzia. and spent time going through that medicine, its mechanism of action, its administration, and then also created prior authorization criteria for that medicine as well. Are there any questions about the work that the DUR board has done over the last several months? Okay, thank you. One other update that I wanted to let the P&T committee know about is that there has been a study completed this year by the legislative auditors looking at PBMs and evaluating costs and utilization across our Medicaid plan. And the summary of their report has recommended that the state engage in a study to evaluate the possibility of a uniform preferred drug list. So a uniform PDL is something that has been adopted by more than 20 states now, and helps establish standards for patients, standards for providers that are uniform, but also has been shown to be a cost savings for state plans. So the intent of this study is to do just that, is evaluate the financial side of this move to a unified PDL for the state of Utah. We have engaged an outside individual named Steve Lyles, who works for Change Healthcare, but Steve serves as a pharmacist who also negotiates all of our secondary drug rebate contracts with many of our different manufacturers. But in his role, he has also performed research for other states who have undergone uniform PDL. So he's done this many times already and actually has a lot of knowledge in this field and understands the approach and how to engage the appropriate parties. And so he'll be starting his research and analysis in October. We are working closely with our ACO partners to perform this work. So after he does his analysis, he's got all of our claims data now, both for fee-for-service and our ACOs. He will also work with Milliman and help with the impact that it would have on the rates for the ACOs and evaluate it up against that as well. So there's a balanced approach in this. And then there are also other considerations when it comes to a uniform PDL. There is this analysis that is done from a fiscal side, but there's lots of operational things that will also go into this. So when we look at this, it's how do we actually find a fine balance between the state who is designing the PDL and making sure there's appropriate input from the ACOs when it comes to designing that PDL, right? And we also look at other things like prior authorization criteria and uniformity of PA criteria and how we actually develop PAs and assess other areas of the PDL as well. So we will be engaging in more discussions on that next month. And a report is due to the legislature next year on this. So we would see something like this being a topic of discussion early next year as some of the study is completed and we've been able to move into a greater understanding of the parts that are involved to implement something like this. And we're looking at a potential implementation date of July 1 if this were to move forward. So are there any questions about uniform PDL?
Yeah, will you be seeking input from the individual payers on this?
Yeah, I think as we look at how we engage our stakeholder groups for the other part, not the financial part, but all the other pieces, that is something we will definitely put on the table. So thank you for asking that question. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up a couple things that I forgot to mention earlier. One is if you're calling in and not on video, or if your name isn't showing correctly, please notify us. Just email medicaidpharmacy@utah.gov or put it in the chat, just your name and the organization that you're with. And that's all the housekeeping items. So with that, we'll turn the time over to Elena Martinez to give us our presentation on biological treatments for asthma.
Thanks, Brian, and good morning, everybody. As you mentioned, I'm going to present a summary of the P&T report about biological treatments for asthma. Let me share with you some slides. Can you all see the slides?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you. All right. Patients with severe asthma present with frequent exacerbations, severe symptoms, low lung function, and reduced quality of life that constitute a significant burden on the patient and healthcare spending. These patients represent approximately 4% of asthmatic cases. There are two severe asthma phenotypes: type 2 inflammation and non-type 2 inflammation. 50% of severe asthma patients have a type 2 inflammatory phenotype that includes allergic and eosinophilic asthma. This phenotype results in release of inflammatory cytokines, such as interleukin-4, 5, and 13 by type 2 immune cells in response to infections or allergen exposure. Allergic asthma phenotype affects 40 to 50% of asthmatic patients and is characterized by its presentation during childhood, atopy, positive allergy, skin testing, and increased levels of immunoglobulin E, fractional exhaled nitric oxide or FeNO, and eosinophils. Eosinophilic asthma phenotype affects approximately 25% of patients with severe asthma and is characterized by its presentation in adulthood, significant eosinophilia, and responsive to inhaled corticosteroids or oral corticosteroids, elevated FeNO levels, and increased production of interleukin-5 and 13. Patients with oral corticosteroid-dependent asthma represent approximately 30 to 45% of severe asthma patients. These patients require regular oral corticosteroid use and may have underlying type 2 inflammation. This table displays the 5 monoclonal antibodies currently approved as add-on maintenance therapy for patients with eosinophilic or allergic asthma phenotypes or with oral corticosteroid-dependent asthma. These agents include 3 interleukin-5 antagonists, benralizumab, mepolizumab, and reslizumab, an interleukin-4 receptor antagonist, dupilumab, and an immunoglobulin E antagonist, omalizumab. Dupilumab and omalizumab are approved for moderate to severe asthma, dupilumab for eosinophilic phenotype or oral corticosteroid-dependent asthma, and omalizumab for allergic phenotype. Benralizumab, mepolizumab, and reslizumab are approved for severe eosinophilic asthma. Reslizumab is approved in adults only, and the others are approved in adults and pediatric patients of varied ages, depending on the product. Additional approved indication for these agents include moderate to severe atopic dermatitis and chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyposis for dupilumab, eosinophilic granulomatosis with polyangiitis for mepolizumab, and chronic idiopathic urticaria for omalizumab. The age of approval varies depending on the indication. All biological treatments are administered subcutaneously except reslizumab that is administered intravenously only. Benralizumab, dupilumab, and mepolizumab may be self-administered, while omalizumab and reslizumab should be administered by a healthcare professional due to the risk of anaphylaxis. Maintenance dose frequency is every 2 weeks with dupilumab and omalizumab, every 4 weeks with mepolizumab, omalizumab, and reslizumab, or every 8 weeks with benralizumab. The 2020 Global Initiative for Asthma, or GINA, includes 5 treatment steps for the management of asthma in patients 6 years and older, as summarized in this table. Now, focusing on steps 4 and 5 of the GINA guideline, patients with severe asthma require step 4 or step 5 therapy that can include, for example, medium or high dose inhaled corticosteroids or ICS, plus a second asthma controller such as long-acting beta-2 agonist or LABA. Add-on biologic treatment is recommended in step 5 for patients having exacerbations or poor control of symptoms, despite treatment with high-dose ICS plus LABA, and who have allergic or eosinophilic biomarkers or require maintenance oral corticosteroids. Biologic product selection is based on asthma phenotypes and predictors of asthma response, such as high levels of eosinophils or FeNO, while considering cost, dosing frequency, route of administration, and patient preferences. Biological treatments in patients with moderate to severe asthma and type 2 inflammation are efficacious for reducing exacerbations, improving lung function, controlling asthma symptoms, and decreasing oral corticosteroid use, which is linked to serious adverse events. The annualized asthma exacerbation rate was reduced by 50% with these treatments compared to placebo in their respective clinical trials. Following a systematic search, no head-to-head comparative randomized controlled trials have been published with these agents in asthmatic patients. The 2020 European Academy of Allergy and Clinical Immunology guideline for severe asthma provides a strong recommendation based on expert opinion for the unreliability of making indirect efficacy and safety comparisons among these 5 biologics due to heterogeneity in patient populations, inclusion and exclusion criteria, and definition of outcomes across clinical trials. Potential safety differences among these biologics are known as no head-to-head randomized controlled trials have been performed. Omalizumab and reslizumab have a black box warning regarding an anaphylaxis risk that may be life-threatening. Warnings related to all biologic agents include hypersensitivity reactions, pre-treatment screening and treatment of parasitic infections prior to therapy initiation, caution regarding reduction of corticosteroid dosage, and avoiding their use for acute asthma symptoms or status asthmaticus. Malignancies have been reported in clinical trials at a numerically higher rate with omalizumab and reslizumab compared to placebo. All biologics carry a risk of immunogenicity. The development of anti-drug antibodies can increase the clearance of the biologic, elevate eosinophil levels, or cause adverse effects. For the purpose of the Utah Medicaid preferred drug list, All agents are considered equally efficacious with respect to their approved indications. At least one biologic administered subcutaneously may be included as preferred in the PDL. Alternatively, at least one subcutaneous biologic agent indicated for each of the type 2 inflammatory asthma phenotypes, eosinophilic and allergic, may be included as preferred in the PDL. The P&T committee may consider a grandfather clause that to allow patients currently receiving a biologic to continue on the same therapy. And regarding utilization of biological treatments for asthma among the Utah Medicaid fee-for-service pharmacy and medical claims during the last year, from June 2019 through June 2020, only adults received these medications. Dupilumab was the most utilized biologic, with 13 patients receiving this agent, followed by omalizumab, benralizumab, and mepolizumab. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. All right. Next, we'll move on. We've got a couple of people who've signed up for public comment. First, we have Christine Dubé from AstraZeneca.
Okay. All right. Can you hear me? It's one thing I have to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right. Good morning. My name is Chris Dubé. I am with Medical Affairs at AstraZeneca, and I thank you today for the opportunity to present information on Fasenra injection for subcutaneous use. Fasenra is indicated for add-on maintenance therapy of patients with severe asthma, 12 years or older, with an eosinophilic phenotype. Fasenra is given as a fixed dose with no weight-based dosing, maintenance dosing administered subcutaneously every 8 weeks, after 2 months with the first 3 doses given at 0, 4, and 8. It is available as both a pre-filled syringe for office use or an auto-injector pen for self-administration. It's not indicated for the treatment of other eosinophilic conditions for the relief of acute bronchospasm. It is a human monoclonal antibody. It binds directly to the IL-5 receptor and reduces eosinophils through antibody-dependent cell-mediated toxicity. In a phase 2 trial, this was demonstrated by rapid and clear completion, nearly clear completion of the blood eosinophil levels within 24 hours of getting the drug. The asthma pivotal trials for Fasenra contain 2 exacerbation trials and 1 steroid-sparing trial. In the 2 exacerbation studies, Fasenra significantly reduced the annual exacerbation rate versus placebo from 51% to 28% respectively. Reductions in the rates were observed irrespective of their baseline eosinophilic levels. The most common adverse events in this group, greater than 3%, were headache, pyrexia, and pharyngitis. Now, in the steroid-sparing study, the median percent reduction in OCS use was 75% in the Fasenra versus 25%, and this is in the whole group. 66% of the patients in the Fasenra group achieved a 50% reduction in their OCS use versus 37% in the placebo group. And the adverse events that were more common in the Fasenra group were, again, headache and pyrexia. AstraZeneca requests that Fasenra be maintained on the preferred drug list for the Utah Medicaid program. I'd be happy to take any questions now.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? All right. Looks like we don't have any questions. All right, thank you. So we'll continue on. From TIVA, we have Jennifer Shear.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great, excellent. Thank you. My name is Jennifer Shear. I'm a medical outcomes liaison with Teva Pharmaceuticals, and today I'm here to provide information about Syncare Rozluzumab injection. Syncare injection is an interleukin-5 antagonist monoclonal antibody indicated for add-on maintenance treatment of patients with severe asthma aged 18 years and older and with an eosinophilic phenotype. Syncare is not indicated for treatment of other eosinophilic conditions or relief of acute bronchospasm or status asthmaticus. Syncare is for intravenous use only. The recommended dosage regimen is 3 milligrams per kilogram once every 4 weeks by intravenous infusion over 20 to 50 minutes. There is a box warning associated with the label. Anaphylaxis occurred with Syncare infusion in 0.3% of patients in placebo-controlled studies. Patients should be observed for an appropriate period of time after Syncare infusion. Healthcare professionals should be prepared to manage anaphylaxis that can be life-threatening. The most common adverse reaction, incidence greater than or equal to 2%, includes oropharyngeal pain. The asthma development program for Syncare includes 4 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, 16 to 52 weeks in duration, involving 981 patients, 12 years of age and older. In a sub-analysis of phase 3 pooled data of 953 patients, 69% and 11% were receiving step 4 and step 5 therapy. Compared with placebo, Reslizumab reduced exacerbation rates by 53% and 72% in step 4 and 5 groups. By study end, Reslizumab increased FEV1 in step 4 and 5 groups by 103 and 237 ml. In a second post-hoc analysis of pooled phase 3 data, evaluated patients with late onset eosinophilic asthma and with early onset asthma. Compared with placebo, Reslizumab produced a 75% relative reduction in asthma exacerbations in patients with late onset asthma. The adverse event profile of Reslizumab was similar in patients with early or late onset asthma. Reslizumab produced larger reductions in asthma exacerbations and larger improvements in lung function in patients with late versus early onset asthma. In a third post-hoc analysis of pooled phase 3 data, patients were randomized to Reslizumab or placebo. Oral corticosteroid-dependent patients were evaluated at baseline. Reslizumab-treated patients had a lower mean cumulative systemic corticosteroid dose per patient compared to those on placebo, and fewer systemic corticosteroid prescriptions issued per patient. For long-term safety, an open-label extension study evaluated safety and efficacy of Reslizumab for up to 24 months in 1,051 patients. Continuous exposure was 12 months for 740 patients and 24 months for 249 patients. The most common adverse events were worsening of asthma and nasopharyngitis. Serious adverse events affected 7% of patients, 2%.
Thank you, Dr. Shear. Thank you, Dr. Shear.
Thank you. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Dr. Shear? All right. With that, we'll move forward with committee discussion questions. The floor is open. Would it be helpful for any of the committee members if Elena was to present any of the slides that just put any of those back up on the screen? For me, the table was useful that had the different treatments and the different indications. And I welcome feedback from other committee members as well. Any thoughts on placement on the PDL and management of this class.
Looking at the utilization data, as the Xolair, is it broken out by formulation? Is that why it's on there twice, that it has the two?
Yes, yes, there are different presentations. So this is why we have two, yeah.
What is the difference between the two as far as the graph, the utilization graph?
I mean, one, let me show you. So one is a powder for injection and the other one is a ready-to-use solution.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the two. Let's see. Here is Xolair injection 150 milligrams per milliliter, and the other one is Xolair 150 milligrams. So one is a powder, and the other one is a solution for injection.
Okay. And are the indications the same for those, or are they
Yes.
different?
No,
Okay.
the same.
Okay. Thank you for noticing that, Nicole. And you had another slide that had some potential considerations for the preferred drug list.
Looking at the slide, it looks to me like the second bullet point there seems to make the most sense. We don't work up a lot of asthma to this degree in the emergency department, so I'd appreciate any insight from those that do, if they can differentiate, or how often they'll differentiate treatment by etiology, but I assume frequently.
And looking at the utilization, these are a relatively low utilization group of drugs. It's, I think, generally reserved for those with more advanced disease that is resistant to other treatments. And I welcome feedback, especially from those who treat more of this, perhaps, Dr. Hoffman, Dr. Sheffield, or Dr. Valentine as well.
Also, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm treating this level of severity of asthma, but I've seen patients on these medications, but not as the prescriber. This does seem reasonable to me as well. And certainly by this stage of that severity of asthma, they're involved with subspecialty care that's doing these differentiations around eosinophilic and allergic, and before they're doing these kinds of medications.
Yeah, generally due to cost and authorization criteria, as well as consideration of side effects and whatnot. I'm not generally or in the past I wasn't the prescriber of these medications. I was referring on to subspecialty care for this, but yeah, I'd probably say I've ever dealt with fewer than probably 5 individuals who got to this point. But it is necessary when it's there. So I think that sounds reasonable as well.
And
Okay. And
I'd just add, I'd love to have pediatric, make sure that the most children we can include based on some of those age stratifications, the better.
Okay. So it sounds like there's some support for the second bullet, which reads at least one subcutaneous biologic indication for each of the type 2 inflammatory asthma phenotypes, eosinophilic and allergic, potentially to be included.
Could you go back to the table potentially? Just one.
I keep trying to find that table in it was in the drug class review. What table number is it again? Is it table 2? It's in table 2 in the document that was sent out as well.
Page 7 of the PDF.
It's table 1 and table 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both are talking about the products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Valentine and Dr. Hoffman. This is a pulmonary subspecialist prescribed medication, and the workup to determine, are they eosinophilic or are they allergic? That's also pretty much purely a pulmonology thing to do, and honestly something that they don't always do. And then the other comment I'll make is that, the utilization data looks like the dupilumab or however you say that is actually primarily used for atopic dermatitis, we didn't really address that obviously in terms of efficacy, but it looks like that's where that one's getting used.
Yeah. Yes, I think I sent to you another table. I think it's I have it here. I think with the ICD-10 codes. Yeah, this one.
Yeah,
so
which is where I got which is why I made the comment, because of that you included. Thank you.
Yeah. So probably some patients are using Dupixent or dupilumab for atopic dermatitis.
And also based on the numbers and the risks, I mean, just I'd be supportive of grandfathering any individuals currently, or any drugs currently on therapy, I don't think it'd be worth trying to force any changes.
One thing to keep in mind with that is that we have low enough utilization, as well as having prior authorization criteria in place, that I don't know whether a grandfathering clause would be necessary. Typically, when we do prior authorization, if someone is continuing with care and it's working for them, generally we're not going to disrupt therapy.
And sorry, I'm coming back to your question about omalizumab, about the presentations. So I was checking the package insert again, and it's true that it seems to be only available as a powder for injection. So it's a powder that should be reconstituted only. So so we could have combined these two lines. So finally, it's a powder that should be reconstituted. This is what I saw in the package insert. So this is the only presentation available right now. Yeah.
Elena, this is Joe. Just for my understanding, I was to understand that they had a self-administered presentation. I think you kind of referenced that, and there that was the future, to have patients self-administer.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this is so omalizumab, according to the package insert, should be administered by a healthcare professional in a healthcare setting. But it's true that during COVID-19, there's an exception, and there are some patients that can administer omalizumab at home or instead of going to a clinic. This is the exception they are doing right now.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Cole, it looks like you're trying to talk, but you're on mute.
Sorry, I had a cough there too.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, so as written there, I was trying to integrate the pediatric into it, and I'm having a little difficulty. So if anyone has any suggestions there.
Okay.
But I agree, one subcutaneous biologic indicated for the different etiologies of the inflammatory asthma phenotypes should be included on the PDL.
Okay, and does that include that first part about equally efficacious with respect to their approved indications?
It does.
Okay. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, it looks like the motion passes unanimously. And are there any additional?
Brian?
Yes.
Wait, Brian, just for clarity from the group, and Elena, can you keep that? So what the motion was is to accept the top part. All biologics are considered equally efficacious, and then the second option below, or just because I'm taking notes.
The second bullet. That was my understanding as well.
Okay, thank you. Unless someone differs. Thank you.
Brian, do we need to make any choices among the three that are listed for eosinophilic or no?
No, the department will take a look at cost and utilization and other factors and make determinations as to placement on the PDL.
The only other consideration I would suggest is that if there are multiple indications, it may be useful to have that weigh into decision-making a little bit.
Okay.
With the atopic dermatitis, given that it's common for patients to have both.
Right. Well, and for someone to use, say, dupilumab for atopic dermatitis, having, regardless of the placement on the PDL for asthma, it doesn't necessarily restrict that drug for an unrelated indication. And again, these are drugs that we manage with prior authorization as well.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. If there's no further discussion or motions, we'll prepare to close. Next meeting will be November 19th, and we will be discussing immune globulins at that time. And also looking forward to first meeting of next year. Typically, we would hold that in March. We'd like to hold it in February instead. We'll be discussing continuous glucose monitoring products, and we're excited about that topic. Unless there's committee members that have objections, we would like to hold that meeting in February instead of March. I don't see any major protests, so I think
Who knows where we'll all be in February and March.
Hopefully COVID will have calmed down a little bit, but we'll see. Time will tell. I believe that concludes our business. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. Second. I'll second that.
Second.
Yeah.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.